In. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
That's great. Give me a moment. I want to tweet out for people to join in, at least as many people as they will see.
That would be fantastic. We're a small and humble show here, but growing little by little every day.
Well, I'm glad to hear. Honestly, it's great to see um, podcasts that talk about issues outside of the U.S. It's so much. The discourse online is very U.S. centric, and once in a while, it's good to see outside perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, I totally, man. I mean, that's why when I ran into you online, I thought, oh, this is the kind of guy a person I want to talk to because
No, thanks.
this is, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love all of our brothers and sisters and people out there that are big time on the left, like hustling big YouTube channels and hustling big podcasts and stuff like that. But I'm always a little bit like in the comments kind of like, hey, can y'all like talk to some people from outside the United States a little bit, like or at least people who are not from the United States, or the millions of people who are from the United States but live outside the United States, because you can sit around inside the United States and talk about socialism in other countries, talk about the way it is in Scandinavia or the way it is in Greece or something like that, but we don't have these voices in there usually. So it's like a desert, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Something else that I always keep in mind is that when it comes to like progressive advocacy and like you know giving examples, I feel like people from the United States only reference back to the United States while they miss things about policies abroad or throughout history that could reinforce their ideas a bit better, not on purpose, but largely because of an ignorance of like these things. And I think we could give a lot of we could give a lot of understanding by talking about policies and like phenomena outside of the US and that limited perspective.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to add to your point, it is kind of ironic, right? That progressives within the United States. I mean, even a lot of people, like you, for example, like are watching probably a lot of this stuff that's being talked about in progressive media in the United States, just because it's sent all over the world. But it's like that one of the key issues in the United States is that we just like in like U.S. politics and in the U.S. psyche is that we don't look outside and like take notes from other places that have had successes and failures, and try to learn from that. We're always trying to like reinvent the wheel in our own way in the United States for some reason. We're so proud to be Americans, you know what I mean?
In a way, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of innovation that comes from inside the US too, but I mean, there's just there's some things that we're just so far behind on. Like, I mean, I'll talk about healthcare all day long, you know what I mean? Like,
sure. I mean, yeah, I think I like to bring up once in a while that like the United States has the economic capacity to do so much more than it currently does. I feel like people see it as alien, the ability to provide more welfare, more, more like services to your population. You know what I usually like to bring up? Uh, Greece has 1/6 the GDP per capita of the United States. So the Greek GDP per capita is around $10,000 US, which is usually that is straddling the edge of like poor country and rich country.
Okay.
Most like really big wealthy countries have usually around 35, 40 and above. The United States has $60,000 US per person. But something that is pretty interesting is that Greek life expectancy, infant mortality is better. Um, the the ability for people to access like good quality healthcare and hospitalize and enter hospitals is
Yeah.
better. Bankruptcy from medical bills isn't really that big an issue.
Yeah.
It's not something that is talked about often. What we do talk about is like the cost of prescription medication, even though Greece does regulate them, because Greeks are pretty poor
Hmm.
in general. Keep in mind that a vial of insulin here costs around 25 euros,
Mm.
something that in the United States would cost at least 10 or 15 times that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but people are still struggling, and the Greek healthcare system isn't comprehensive. It is pretty good. It
Yeah.
used to be, at least, but economic downturns, are really devastating. Another interesting thing is Greece has less income inequality than the United States, which is also insane to me, and a lesser poverty rate at 6 times the GDP per capita. The United
Yeah.
States has a bigger poverty rate than Greece, which is
That's
yeah.
really I mean, that's it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I've been to Greece, and like, I mean, and just in general in Europe, like I try to remind people, like, I live here in Norway, but I'm originally from the United States, and people talk about, oh, it's so great here in Norway. I couldn't ever move anywhere else because it's like, oh, like, the income is, really great and it's so stable and stuff. And I'm like, you could probably take the poorest country in Europe and they would still have better like social services than in the United States. Like you could.
In some respects,
Mhm.
absolutely. Like we have like we have tuition-free public universities, for
Yeah.
example. We have like a, let's say, working universal healthcare system that experiences a lot of cuts, but it's still around. I
Hmm.
mean, I've gotten treatment in Greece, so has a lot of my family members, and
Yeah.
it's not crippling, you know.
Yeah, you're not like, I mean, one thing that people really deal with a lot in the US, I know I have, is just this like um overall just general anxiety of what if something happens, like what if I break my leg, what if I do this, what if I do that. And it's not and the first thought is not like, oh, that's gonna hurt, or like, oh, that's really gonna suck. It's gonna be like, oh my god, I'm gonna be in
Oh
debt
yeah,
and I'm not gonna
it's
be able to go to work, and like all this
yeah.
stuff, and I might end
Um,
up like on the streets or something.
yeah, see, I have lived in the UK and in Greece, and I really haven't thought about health insurance
Hmm.
ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it, and I've visited hospitals before. I
Yeah.
mean, and for example, like I was in the UK, right? Like a what, like a couple of months, maybe 3 months ago, and I thought I had a tongue infection. It appeared it was a large like mouth ulcer, and I went to the hospital, right?
Hmm.
And I got it checked out, and they said, "Oh, just take this and you'll be fine." And they just sent me out on my way. No bills, no nothing really. You just
Uh-huh.
go in, go out. Bye bye.
Yeah, mind blowing, right? It's
Yeah,
like, I
you
mean,
don't. Yeah,
that's how it is here in Norway too. And I mean, for the most part, it's commonplace. Like I think it's hilarious. Like I got I don't know if you have this, like if you've received this card, but like there's this card you can order, and it's like you get it for free, and it's called like the EU health card,
I
and
see.
like most Europeans don't even think about this, but as like an American, like I heard about this and I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like I can get this card, and it means anywhere I travel in Europe, like I show them this card and be like, oh, I'm from Norway, I'm a resident of Norway, but I'm in Greece. Like you can treat me and like send the bill to Norway. And I'm like bragging about this card, like when I got it, to my friends here in Norway, and they're just like, "What's the big deal?"
Yeah, what is the big? Yeah, it's something we, you know, that's the thing. Greece has such crazy politics most of the time. It's never simple with Greek politics, and
Mm,
yet like we can, with all the craziness in Greece, I can look at some aspects of the United States, and even from our craziness, I can say, well, that's insane. That's barbaric. How can you do this? Well, I'm talking from Greece, right? Like a Greece that had a recently active Nazi party. Like
Yeah.
we have stuff like this, and yet in the country that is far more stable and far richer, in fact 6 times richer per person, they don't have something. They pretend that it would bankrupt them. No, it wouldn't. What? How?
It would
Also, I
only
am
bankrupt the
convinced. Yeah,
pharmaceutical companies.
I am convinced not a single person online understands marginal tax rates either. Like, god damn it, it's not. I am not an economist, but it's not exactly a hard like concept to grasp. You know that over a certain level you'll be taxed at a certain rate for every cent. You know, over that.
Exactly.
I don't understand how like people can be propagandized against marginal tax by saying, "Oh yeah, you'll lose 70% of your income." What are you talking about?
I think the word. I think you said it though. I think the word really is propaganda. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's super effective. You know what I mean? And we're kind of like and I can see. I want to have you introduce yourself in just a second for everybody that's listening. But I can see we have a lot of stuff to talk about, of course. But I just want to say, I think we're just people. We're just individuals, and we're up against systems that are much bigger than us. We're up against whole institutions of people with lots of money who are like spending their lives like crafting propaganda. You know what I mean? So it's not easy for the lay person to just, it's not easy for the lay person to fight up against that.
I feel like I also need to like I will very briefly address this, but like like how like mainstream media works in Greece is not that much different, but with us, the difference is that corruption scandals and favoritism, like by Greek channels, comes by their direct collusion with any reigning government.
Okay.
Greece has a really big problem with corruption. Like, you don't have a big privateer, for example, owning a big channel. You'll have the government like paying, paying for privileges with certain channels, and like that certain channels are gonna be conservative, or not. Most mainstream media channels are fairly conservative in Greece. We also have like some state media, like state media broadcasts, but it's a bit different. We usually have scandals every once in a while about which what kind of money the government paid, what kind of money any like party paid for access.
Yeah, but it is interesting, right? Like, I mean, isn't like because you said you lived in the UK too. Like, am I right that isn't also the BBC like receive funding from the government?
The BBC does receive government funding, and it has become, I think, noticeably more conservative as time has gone on. But I don't know that much about how things work with mainstream media, if I'm honest. Neither in Greece nor the UK.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I'm getting at really is it's just kind of like funny because sometimes we like to say like especially in the United States, they'll be like, oh, RT, this is like state funded media, but they'll never be like, oh, BBC, it's the state funded media.
Language does play a big role in how we talk about things. Like, for example, like you might call something a gulag, outside of the United States, but like U.S. prisons are
it's like
they are basically labor camps to a great extent. That's the thing. Like, we need to understand that a lot of things can be worse outside of the States, but it's not necessarily that they are so different to what like is actually happening within the States. Something that in the States you'd call a prison or a correctional facility, somebody else would call a gulag or a labor camp.
Like I mean, in U.S. prisons we have either free or cheap labor, where, I mean,
Yeah.
people are literally either working for free or they're like, doing whatever for like $1 a day. And I mean, if you said that was happening at a prison or a gulag in, I don't know, India or something like that, like people would be like, oh my God,
That
I
is
can't believe
insane.
it. Yeah. What this
Those barbarians.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same old, same old. So, hey, before we continue, I feel like we're just hitting it off right here. Can you just tell us a little bit about about your background and like where you're at right now and like what you're working on right now?
Sure. Well, right now I'm in Athens.
Uh,
I am mostly working on like fixing some computers that I have here that I want to
mm.
sell. Like I make them and I sell them. I just finished my degree
Oh,
in
okay.
military history.
That's
Now
great. Yeah.
have a
Mhm.
bachelor's in military history. And yeah, I lived in the UK for 6 years, more or less, and now I'm semi-permanently back in Greece. It's really hot lately. Yeah, Greek summer. But yeah, I my Twitter, I think I should mention, is at Richard Hannay 17.
Yes.
I once in a while I give some opinions, and I'm mostly disappointed by the level of history in Twitter discourse. It's really poor. Um,
Oh,
and
yes.
I was surprised to find like a new species of atrocity denier. It's the Nanking massacre deniers, like
Mm.
Japanese nationalists on Twitter that will jump at you if you ever mention Nanking. I had to block like 20 of those. So
Interesting.
many, yeah.
I'm
Well,
not even
it's
familiar with this situation, but
seems that Japan has a few things to like reconcile still with that part of their history.
as do we all.
Oh yeah.
I guess, yeah. The Greek history, the Greece's real time to shine was like too long ago, I guess. So people kind of forget about it now.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I'm perpetually disappointed by people who talk about like they say, "Oh, I really like Greek history." I'm like, "Oh, which parts? Like a post-revolution? Like talking about like the 1870s, like the Balkan Wars, World War One, the juntas, like the political history of Greece?" And like, "Oh no, the ancient Greeks and the statues and Athens." I'm like, "Oh, okay, like okay,
Yeah,
that's interesting." But
Zeus,
it's
the
no longer
mythology.
all that relevant,
Yeah,
modern Greek history is so interesting and nobody knows anything about it, and I'm very disappointed
yeah.
because
That's why.
there's a
That's
lot
why.
to learn.
That's why I wanted to talk to you today, because I wanted to give us a little bit of what's happening on the ground over there in Athens right now. Because from what you were telling me the other day, there's a general strike going down. There's a lot of. I mean, I've
um,
seen a bit on the news too what's happening, but I was really just like, what's
yes,
happening? Yeah.
so there is a draft labor bill by the government and by the labor minister, which they called it like basically like a progressive bill that would bring Greece into the 20th, 21st century labor market. And they said that it was a pro-worker bill, which is laughable. Yeah, that's what I would call it. The main thing, like it advertises that, is giving you a flexible work week, which means that you can work 2 extra hours in a day. So instead of 8 hours, you can work for 10, and you don't get overtime in those 2 extra hours. You get them as time off, which
Mm.
is actively not money. Time off equals not money. Um, and not only that, you basically rely on when you're going to get that time off from your employer, which means that you might never get it.
So
There,
yeah,
it also, yeah, it
you have to
makes it.
negotiate with
Yeah,
your
you have.
employer.
Oh, by the way, yeah, they're weakening uh, collective
Bargaining.
bargaining.
Yeah.
There is a weakening of. So they basically tell unions that they have to provide at least like an emergency staff of at least 33%, like one third of the workforce for like emergency services, which nullifies some of the power of a strike.
Mm.
It also said they also added like a sneaky provision about like union democracy, which says that all the like that in order for a strike to be legal, at least uh, at least 50% of the members that the union represents have to vote in favor. What does that mean, though? A union
Mm.
represents more people than actually take part and participate in the voting process. It's like saying that at least 50% of the people living in the entire country, including children and people who don't vote, have to vote for a government uh, to stay, afloat. Do you see where they don't talk about active members or people that actually participate in the votes. They talk about members that are just represented by the union, which is arguably pretty much every worker in a workplace.
Oh
And if a
wow. Okay.
workplace is partially unionized, then that union is basically every one of its actions is made illegal. They give a lot of power in firing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's just like a bill that kind of turns back the clock quite a few years.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
And basically,
Anti-labor.
basically the entire government opposition, like the entire opposition to the government, has condemned the bill as like anti-worker, including the centrists, the movement for change, which is the center. The left has been soundly against it. And the two big left parties, essentially the Syriza, which is the used to be the governing party between 2015 and like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
They are the second biggest party in Greece. They called they called for strike action. PAME, which is the All Worker Militant Front, which is controlled to a great extent by the Communist Party. They
Okay.
also called for a general strike. So they organized a general strike for the 10th. The big conglomerate syndicates also called YESE and IED also called for a strike. So basically, they decided to do an organized general strike on the 10th of June. That would take effect.
Wow.
That took effect throughout the country. Pretty much everything kind of stopped working. Transportation, the unions like that take care of like dock workers, like port employees, lawyers, accountants, construction workers unions, chemical workers unions, even the Marriott Hotel union showed up. Like there was dozens of unions that protested all over the country, with the biggest protests during the strike taking part in Athens, with around 15,000 protesters. And
Wow.
the strike held for 24 hours, which was they expected, like as a warning, like don't pass this bill, it's gonna be trouble. And there's almost always trouble, um, because Greece has a fairly organized, like even though the union numbers in Greece have been steadily declining, it's not as powerful as it used to be.
Mm.
It has around 30% union membership now. For the United States, that is enviable. For countries like
Yeah.
Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, it's
Yeah.
not. Like you guys
Almost
have around,
everybody's in the union.
yeah, you have almost 70% union membership. I don't know how radical the unions are over there. However, and how often they call for strikes.
Yeah, not yeah. It's not. It's not. There's not. It's not so radical. I would say. I mean, they're very. I would say they're very helpful. I've been in a union here in Norway before. I was in the teachers union actually, and they're very helpful on like an individual basis. And doing like these collective bargaining agreements and stuff like that. But they're not really into like disrupting society too much, like through a strike or something like that.
I guess the government there isn't too content on fighting them either, right? They wouldn't try to
Yeah.
pass a bill like that
It's almost like I feel like I've been through a lot of like, I mean, they've been very effective like in some cases that I've worked with the unions here, but I would say it's almost like performative, like the business, like the owners of the businesses, or like the directors of the like institutions or whatever, they like try to get away with like whatever they can get away with, but they can't really get away with that much. Comparatively, they can still get away with quite a
I
bit,
mean,
but
that's good. That's how you want unions working. In
yeah, it's pretty
effect.
tight. It's pretty
Yeah.
tight, I would say. Yeah.
The people complain about the outcome of like widespread unionization being like disruptions to the economy. No, that is a consequence of not giving like proper working conditions to people. Strikes don't happen for no reason. They're
Yeah.
usually a byproduct
Yeah.
of like poor conditions, and Greece has plenty of poor conditions there. Like you can't avoid them. There's going to be another one, by the way. There's going to be another strike. The PAME is organizing another strike tomorrow.
Okay.
I live tweeted the first one from what I saw in Athens. I don't know if I'll do the same for tomorrow. I don't know how big it will be, but there's probably going to be a few people.
What was what was like, was there an outcome, or was there a response to the strike by the public or by the government?
The government, not really. They like I watched we have a parliamentary channel in Greece, which just follows parliamentary proceedings like all day long. They just do that for when the parliament is in session. And from what I watched, they really didn't talk about it. Mostly the opposition was talking about it and explaining how, yeah, you pretended this was like going to be a popular like bill, but it really isn't. At least 73% of people in working class positions say that, nah, this isn't it. This isn't a popular bill at all.
What do you like? I'm just curious because I mean, we have unions not so popular in the United States. They love busting up the unions and everything there. It just doesn't. It's not copacetic with free market capitalism craziness. But what do you think it is in Greece that has made the public support of unions as strong as it is? Because it sounds like it's fairly strong, at least comparatively to the United States.
Decently strong compared to the US. Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah, not compared to like Scandinavia, but
I'd say mainly like union membership in Greece has been strongly influenced by radical politics, like to pretty substantial extent. Primarily because the Communist Party, which has been the traditional like left party in Greece, has been active since 1918, and there was also the like running through the history very quickly. They were illegal for a long time. There was during World War II, they organized a mass resistance movement in Greece, and then when the government was brought back by the British, there was a civil war was ignited over control in Greece, and they basically have always been a very militant like power in union organizing in Greece. They are a Marxist-Leninist party, to keep in mind. They've gone through a lot of. They're basically, imagine them like if the USSR really never died. These people are very, very like loving of Soviet politics, and they went through the motions a lot like the USSR. They de-Stalinized in the 50s. They went through an era of like more like reevaluating their politics. They dislike China, just like the Soviet Union did for a long time. They consider, it's pretty interesting because if you go on Twitter, for example, you'll see that most Marxist-Leninists there like really like China. If you ask the Greek Communist Party if they like China, they'll tell you no, they are capitalist and imperialist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is it's interesting. It's like pointing out the obvious. It's like, but yeah, I'm getting off track. Basically, a lot of basically the entire Greek left has been very very supportive of unions, and when the and like or organizing for protests and strikes has been way more common after the military dictatorship fell. The Greece was in a military junta, which was backed by the U.S. It was between 1967 and 1974.
Mm.
And when democracy returned, there was kind of like, imagine like a period of like a two-party democracy, a lot like the United States. And now politics is getting even more interesting because one of the big parties imploded. So imagine if the United States continued on like this for another, say, 15, 20 years, and the Democratic Party imploded and
That's
splintered into.
might happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like the Republican Party is much more likely to do that. But basically, after the economic crisis, which hit Greece in 2008,
Yeah.
2009, after a brief stint in the president, like in the prime ministership, like and a leadership, the PASOK party basically imploded in the 20 between the 2009 and 2012 elections.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2015, Syriza, which was a fringe left party, they were called the Coalition of the Radical Left, went from having like 2% of the vote to having 35% of the vote, which is insane if you think of it in terms of like parties. Yeah,
Wow.
they both the big parties hovered around 40% with the 40% with the Communist Party being at around 5, and other like fringe parties usually like growing in popularity at certain time periods. But basically, what with the implosion of PASOK, which was the center left party, for a while there was a wide open field, and New Democracy isn't exactly, which is the Conservative Party, isn't exactly universally loved. But yeah, no, we've had union organizing has always been pretty radical in Greece, and very expressly anti-capitalist in its nature. There are big, like non-controversial unions, but they also have been fairly like the big communist union is PAME, really the one that is really actively seeking like more revolutionary ends. And it's really big. It rivals the other two big ones, YESE and ID. But the other two ones are mostly like concerned with just workers' rights. They don't think about like the more long-term things. But when it came to this general strike, there was solidarity amongst the entire like union movement. They said, "Yeah, this is abhorrent. Despite our disagreements or what we might feel like about each other, we have to like work together on this general strike."
Yeah.
So once in a while, if the conservative government does something sufficiently heinous, the left you will unite on like doing something about it.
Yeah, and I mean, what I'm just kind of curious because, of course, it's quite different when I think about unions in the U.S. and when I also think about like how the working class has evolved politically in the U.S. like over the past 100 years, say, and like how is it in Greece right now? Because we've seen, especially in the past, say like 10 years or so, we've seen a lot of the working class go from being kind of like union almost kind of on leftist now towards like Trumpism in the United States, kind of anti freaking out about globalism and so how is that in Greece? I mean, who are in unions? Is it like multi-political? Are people more focused on like the worker rather than like the
Well, it
like
would
the
depend on the union and which syndicate they're affiliated with, because like there's a ton of unions. But they're usually affiliated with the larger syndicates of
Mhm.
unions. So, which is I'll say very briefly as an aside, if the United States had the amount of like organization that Greek unions had, like the ability to call for a general strike,
Yeah.
they would be far less inclined to like keep like workers' rights at the level they have them right now,
Yeah.
uh, because the disruption to their economy would have been massive. But I'll just talk
Yeah.
briefly about this about Greece, like the ideological predisposition of working class people, like has always depended on which like political faction like their families have traditionally like been associated with. Like a lot of people that come from like the side of the communists in the Civil War are always more predisposed to like leftist organizing, and political polarization in Greece is much stronger than in say the United States,
Really?
where yeah, no, but the Democrat Republican
Yeah.
like
Oh well,
divide.
yeah. I mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
okay, yeah, it's substantial. Like Republicans are anti-humanity,
Mm,
in my opinion. They are insane. But
mm.
like when it comes to the like political fringes, Greece has a more, far more active like political fringe,
Oh
a
yeah.
much
I see what you're
yeah,
saying.
a much bigger, because like discussions between like conservatives and leftists in Greece almost always start veering towards the direction of the civil war or the junta. So people have much stronger feelings about what their like what their political background tends to be.
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying now. I mean, yeah, in the United States, it's basically like which sports team are you rooting for? You know, people aren't so political.
Sometimes, yeah.
Like, I mean, there are like, you know, like definitely like people, I'd say a minority of people who we could say are like on the fringes, or like people that are like actually engaged in politics, but for the
Yeah, I
most
think
part, it's just like I can't concern myself. I'm too busy like being overworked right now. Like
I
I
think
can't.
people really care about like about those things, but like the like the mainstream
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be as polarized. In Greece, even the mainstream will hurl insults at
Mm.
the at each party, talk about their roots in like in war and in like the junta, and like because our political history has been much more tumultuous
Yeah.
than the United States has experienced, and I guess that also is reflected in society. As to your question,
Yeah.
very briefly, because you asked about like whether we've experienced this like populist Trumpism thing.
Mhm.
Um, we experienced it in a much more extreme way in the
Mhm.
form of like the growing of the Greek neo-Nazi party,
Yeah,
the Golden
yeah.
Dawn,
The Golden
and
Dawn, yeah.
thankfully they've pretty much been destroyed. There is no Golden Dawn anymore. They can't really re- like their entire leadership is in jail right now, in prison.
Mm.
Sorry,
Mhm.
like the leader is will be held for 13 years, and so will the major like party leadership. So there is no, and they've been ruled a criminal organization because they essentially were. Um, but yeah, like that's where the whole like anger towards the economic crisis and bad conditions, the refugee crisis, like all this stuff, like fueled the neo Nazis, which thankfully have been eradicated because they were just too overt for like polite society to handle. In a sense, although the conservatives thought of them in a lot of ways as political allies for like passing legislation without them being really a threat to their power, they kind of grew a little bit out of control. They started
Mm.
killing people. They were organizing like,
Jeez.
uh, oh yeah, this was like it was an insane time between the late 90s and 2020, essentially when this thing ended.
Mhm.
Um, like political violence in the streets of Athens was rampant, uh, and yeah, things were bad.
Mhm.
I've talked a bit. I've talked about the Golden Dawn in quite a few times, and I don't want to get too much into it right now.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, it's a
like,
big topic.
it's a really big topic, and I've talked about it like 3 times already. I've
Yeah,
talked to
exactly.
Bosch
Yeah, I
about
think.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, I think if you check out Vosh's the video you did with him, it's like you go really into great detail about that. It was pretty
yeah, and
awesome.
even then, I feel like I'm lacking a lot of detail because the subject books can be written about it like fairly easily. Because like even in like the Vosch discussion where I talk about it for like an hour,
Hmm.
uh, I only basically give a brief overview and some conclusions about how this whole thing played out. But
Yeah, that's what it
a lot
sounded
more
like
can
to
be
me.
said. A
I was
lot
like
more can be
very
said about it. Yeah.
it was very fascinating, and I was just like, wow, I had no idea. I mean, I knew about Golden Dawn, and I knew they were like this neo, and I was like always like,
Yeah.
what's going on with
I
that?
mean,
But
we
you just
just
touched the
skimmed the
surface.
surface of how vile these people really were, like
Hmm.
about the things they said about how their politics like would play out. Like there is no question, like uh, families like mine would be on trains if they ever, came to power. I,
Wow.
I live that. Yeah, they would destroy Greece in every sense of the way.
Like, I mean, I don't want to like get too deep into it, but I mean, like in general, like what was their main, what was their like main game plan? Like, who were they after?
Their main game plan was well, I'll leave you with their 2012 election slogan, which
Yeah,
was to rid the land of filth.
I
Uh,
remember that. Yeah,
yeah,
it
so
rings a bell now.
they basically wanted to remove all refugees, immigrants, and what they considered to be non-Greek people from Greece. It didn't matter what your ID said. You weren't a Greek citizen if you weren't white.
Mm.
Uh, so they would, if they couldn't deport them, they would start, like ethnic cleansing, uh, basically. They were explicitly like neo-Nazi movement. They admired Adolf Hitler to a very worrying degree. Most of them had swastika tattoos. Most of them had
Jeez.
like uh,
Yeah.
like their political leader like loved Hitler. He gave like the Hitler salute all the time. They were Nazis. They were Nazis.
Yeah, they're
There's
just
no
Nazis.
no two
There's
ways
no
of
way
putting
around
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're asking what their agenda was, well, think of the Nazis,
To be
basically.
Nazis. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So thankfully those guys were defeated. So now the main fight is between like a populist left and a more conservative, a neoliberal but xenophobic right. So like they consider themselves to be neoliberals, but they swung further to the right to accommodate all those lost Golden Dawn voters. So they're fairly anti-immigrant. They tend to be anti-worker. They right now they hold a majority and they hold power because of a general disunity in the left and because the Syriza party handled the second no the third round of of austerity measures pretty terribly because like there was supposed to be negotiation. The Syriza party was voted in specifically to deny um, the basically deny the European Union's agenda when it came to Greek economics because Greece is mostly is given recommendations as to what it should do with its economy, and those recommendations are like follow our recommendations or we'll pull our funding and your economy will collapse because
Mm.
Greece is essentially bankrupt. There's nothing keeping our economy afloat. We lost a third of our GDP in 2009, a
Yeah.
third, and unemployment
Yeah.
skyrocketed. The Greek economy is drowning in debt, and its growth is like non-existent. So basically, we're being held afloat by EU money, and
Uh,
like there's really little we can do to get out on our own volition, apart from like an economic meltdown, a bankruptcy, and getting back on track from there. So basically, they threatened in 2015. They threatened Greece with bankruptcy. The Greeks were asked in a referendum whether or not to accept the austerity measures proposed by the government. The Greeks voted no, pretty substantially. 60% voted no, like we won't accept another round of austerity measures. You know
Yeah.
what the Greek government did? They went back, negotiated a harsher program of austerity with the EU and imposed that. So basically, they flipped the referendum on its head. They said,
Wow.
"Oh, you're saying no to this package of austerity measures. I guess we'll bring you worse
Take
ones."
that.
And that was from a left government. Keep in mind.
Jesus.
That was from a left, and that's why there was a lot of. That's why they lost the 2019 elections. But still, they're better than the conservatives, which they just would have accepted them like outright. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess corruption is a bit less prevalent on that side because it's not dominated by political dynasties
Uh-huh.
that have been siphoning money off of like public, uh, you know, public money. It's bad. It's Greece is really bad. It's
This
really
is
bad.
this is the land of democracy, right? This is where
Yeah,
democracy.
I mean, it was born here. It might as well die here, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is like really got me wondering, and I mean, we'll have to have you on again sometime. There's just like a fabulous wealth of analysis on what's happening in Greece, but and just in general. But like, I mean, what do you think? Like, I mean, where is Greece going right now? I mean, it's relatively bankrupt. It's everybody's pissed off at the government. There's where is it going right now? What's the future of Greece? Do you have any idea?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't know if our current government will survive the 2024. I think 2023 or 2024 we have another. No, 2023 we have another election.
Mm.
The thing with Greece is that like change is like there's more flexibility when it comes to change, and what governments have more are a bit more empowered to do what they want because there's no Senate, there's no electoral college, it's just the parliament. If the parliament
Oh, okay.
passes it will happen. So it makes politics more volatile, sure, but there's not this feeling of hopelessness that like nothing will change no matter what.
Mm.
Greece has had endemic corruption and political instability for as long as its modern existence has, for as long as it has been around. But at the very least, like we can hope that like things might change for the better. Like we don't know how long this will continue, how long the austerity will continue for, or if we will be like, and even if like we're destined to be like perpetually like a debtor like country,
Hmm.
that like with a stagnant economy and like and like poor social services due to like cuts and poverty. I mean, I doubt it. I don't know if we'll stay like that forever. I don't know how climate change will affect Greece either because I don't know. I guess Greece it doesn't stand to get hurt by climate change as much as some other countries will.
Mm.
Really, it's hard to say how the situation in Greece will develop. Virtually, very few governments get re-elected in Greece because very few
Interesting.
governments do well. So every new round of elections, you can usually expect a new government. So
Yeah, that
never
is
know. It's a gamble.
that's pretty interesting actually. Yeah, I didn't realize that about Greece. I mean, it's not like a direct democracy or anything like that, but it is like a
No,
bit more
by no means.
but it is a bit more volatile, like the fact that it's like a parliamentary system, so and it's kind of like a lot of people coming and shifting in and out all the time. Do you have a lot of like lifelong politicians there?
Yeah, we do. We have political dynasties,
Okay.
and they're mainly on the right. Back when it was the two-party political system that was born after the war and after the junta, really, that
Hmm.
it really solidified, because we had like there was a break in our politics basically for as long as the junta was in power. Um, there was, there's the Mitsotakis, like Karamanlis dynasties, the Papandreou dynasty, but now the Papandreou dynasty is pretty much gone. I don't think the Karamanlis dynasty is really around anymore. It's just the Mitsotakis dynasty left, really, with our current prime minister being a Mitsotakis. Uh, but like our political dynasties are they're not like the Kennedys where like they might be admired. We usually make fun of them. uh, I guess they're much. Yeah, that's the thing. Like past Greek prime ministers are far less often seen with like admiration and glamour as U.S. presidents.
Yeah. Well,
This
you know. Yeah.
does not happen in Greece. There's very few people who have rosy tinted eyes, like glasses, about any part of Greek history
I mean,
because
it
most have
sounds
been
to me.
suffering.
I mean, to me. It sounds a lot more realistic. You know what I mean? Plenty of people are like, are in the U.S. are like, very much suffering because of the decisions of our shitty politicians. But still, it's like the ones that are screwing you the most are like the ones that like are emboldened in like Hollywood stars. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, we don't have like Hollywood star presidents. Our current one is trying to be one, but he's mostly like mocked for it.
mhm.
Um, Anyhow, I think like you also wanted to talk briefly about like police brutality
Oh
in
yeah,
Greece
yeah.
because yeah.
If you have time, I'm willing to keep going. Yeah, for sure.
No, yeah, just really very briefly,
Sure.
police brutality works a bit differently in Greece than it does in the United States because most people, when they think police brutality, they think, oh, the United States, where playing Simon Says every time somebody stops you on the street.
Hmm.
Wrong move, you're dead, and it's okay, according to the state. In Greece, they're far less likely to shoot you dead. You won't be shot. Like being shot dead by the police is gonna be a national like crisis, a level of like protests and riots that's gonna break out. Like there's really it's not that big a country. Like people can't get away with like the police shooting somebody unjustifiably. Like
Hmm.
um, but it's different. Police, I think, like Amnesty International has basically has done an extensive analysis of Greek police, and their findings aren't good. Uh, Greek police, and especially the riot police, tend to be extremely violent in protests. They were very happy to coordinate with Golden Dawn during its existence to harass immigrants and refugees. They also have been known to torture people
Mm.
quite often, uh, and the conservative wing is unsurprisingly very police friendly. Uh,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, police in Greece has a little more training than the United States. They get two
Hmm.
years in police academy. I think 2 years.
That's wow. That's like a year and I think like 37 weeks more than we have in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. U.S. police doesn't get trained at all, so they're less likely to shoot you by getting scared of you. But
Hmm.
but they're more likely to torture you and beat people half to death during like protests.
Mm.
And they often try to hide police abuse among themselves. It's a far bigger problem in Athens than it is in with local police, like outside of the big cities. There aren't that many big cities in Greece. It's just Athens and Thessaloniki and maybe Patra.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it is a bigger problem in the cities. they often try to justify violent action against the public if the member like receiving the violence is a member of the anti-state like club, like they call it the anti-state affiliations. If you have
Mm-hmm.
anti-state affiliations, which is usually if you're an anarchist,
Mm-hmm.
or say like a member of like a syndicalist, like communist union or something.
Yeah.
Uh, so if you have if you're part of that club, they'll usually try to justify violence against you as you threw the Molotovs, so they can beat you to death, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're far less likely to kill you, as I said, but they have been known to like be very torturous and act in a pretty like brutal fashion. They often send people in protests as to like to like provoke stuff. So
Uh-huh.
they hide, and we've known this. We have video of this. We have them like hiding as protesters among protesters and throwing like bricks at the police, so the police can
Yeah.
retaliate. Uh, and yeah, they're often fairly violent, and I'll say a couple of things. Like they were yeah they were very happy to collaborate with
Yeah.
Golden Dawn, which
Golden
is
Dawn.
extremely
Yeah.
worrying because the police hasn't really purged its extreme right wing elements that have basically been cultivated over basically 5 decades through the juntas, through the and ever since like the United Kingdom basically ruled Greece after the Civil War. So the Greek police is decidedly like conservative and far right leaning, and they're less likely to kill you, but they're torturous. And not only that, like recently, something that was very worrying. Two things that were very worrying. One, the Greek state decided that it would be a good idea to let police enter universities, which is insane. Uh, just to say for American viewers, like police entering universities might be common in the United States, where there's a police
Mm-hmm.
officer in every
Oh, we have.
like school.
Yeah, there's like literally, okay, so I went to high school like almost like, 18 years ago now when I graduated high school. We had police officers in school. We had like a little tower where in the parking lot where like the police would hang out.
Yeah.
It's like,
See, the concept of a school police officer is completely alien to me. Like,
I mean,
I
at the
yeah,
university we have a whole police station, maybe multiple police stations.
yeah. See, that's the thing. Like in Greek universities, were for the longest time considered asylums from police and
Mm,
persecution. You could go in and basically, it was the idea that you're free to like advocate and like talk about your beliefs without
yeah.
like. And this history dates back to the fall of the junta and the student uprising of 1973, the 17th of November 1973, which is a day. 17th of November is celebrated across pretty much every school in Greece, and it's a day off. And you will usually have like a small school celebration for the brave students that rose up against the junta. So it's kind of more of a symbolic move,
Mm,
because in 1973 on the 17th of November, the 3-day student protests that had erupted against the junta and were asking for bread, peace, and liberty, they were violently shut down and people were murdered. They brought down tanks and they rolled over the gates of the Polytechnic University of Athens, and they killed around 40 people back then. Even my stepfather's best friend was among the first people murdered in the Polytechnic uprising. And ever since then, like the idea of like police being actively inside universities is not something that is considered like you know like okay by Greek society at all, because ever like in the years after the junta, they try to pull back on stuff like this. but I think it's mostly like a symbolic move, like of the Greek state like reasserting its power.
And like what would happen, like for example, because like in the States, it's I mean everybody knows it at this point, it's just very common to just get shot and killed by cops, and I mean I guess this happens in Greece sometimes too. I mean, how common is that? And I mean, what is the public response, or like the, because in the States it's like, I mean, in the past, for decades, it's just been like, or since forever, it's been, we're going to defend the cops. You know what I mean? Only a little bit more recently are cops actually getting served now, and not in most cases. But like, yeah. So how does that work in over there in Greece?
As I said, it's very uncommon.
Yeah,
Uh, Gun ownership in Greece isn't as prevalent as in the United States.
of
There are certain
course.
parts of Greece, like the island of Crete, where it's the biggest island in Greece, where like there's times more guns than people. Uh, we call it the like it's fun. You can call it the little Texas of Greece. But there, like local cops know about this and have grown up, over there, uh, and there isn't as much friction in that respect. But the police knows they're not likely to get shot in any one of their interactions, so they're less likely to shoot people. They're more likely, because they're more likely to beat you, they're less likely to kill you. So I think that the last really big uh, big case of police murder, I think, when was it? 2014, I think, which was the murder of like a teenage like high school student, Grigoropoulos, and
Mm,
uh, that sparked like mass protests and riots. And its day has the anniversary of his death is like talked about pretty much every year, and uh, there are always protests on that day. So Greek society doesn't handle it with charitability when the police kill somebody. Uh,
that's good to know.
no, yeah, they don't. They really don't. Especially like the left wing really is up in arms every time something like that happens. Something to mention very quickly, and I think as a last point before I leave,
Sure.
um, you know, Greece decided to go really ham on enforcing COVID lockdowns
Mm,
to a suspicious degree.
interesting.
I might add, because they had gathered this group of like infectious disease experts, and they were supposedly consulting them, but the Greek public never really had an interaction with these people. And now they've also forced and like an NDA on their information, so they can't talk to the public about what recommendations they gave to the government. So the government imposed very harsh curfews. You were not allowed to go out after 6:30 on weekdays, and the police would have a harsh ticketing system. And instead of like reinforcing the intensive care units by commandeering like say private ICUs and like private clinics for like other patients, so that more ICUs could be freed up. Instead, they just hired like a few thousand more police with minimal training, the special guards, and they basically deployed them in the streets of Athens. And these people like overreacted, like very much to the presence of people like outside past curfew. There were a lot of beatings. There were a few small riots, and like a cop was seriously hurt. And in retaliation, the police went around and beat countless people. They even dragged some like people with disabilities out of a building just to beat them for being outside in the street. So
Jeez.
imagine passing by a place with a disabled man inside, saying, "Well, I want to beat that guy, but he's inside, and it's still past curfew. So let's drag him outside, say that he was out past curfew, and then beat him
What?
for it, and then put him back in."
This is
It's
crazy.
Yeah, that's also they decided that in Greece there is a pretty interesting loophole when it comes to arrests. Like if you can get arrested only if you're actively committing a crime, or if there's a warrant for your arrest. uh, but the police can ask for your state ID, and if you
Mm.
can't provide it, you can be brought to a police station for questioning, for like to make sure about who you are, or you can if even if you have it, you can be required to ask those questions. And in those conditions, you aren't under arrest. You're supposedly voluntarily going with them, but you can't not go with them because they will arrest you. So you have to go with them.
Oh
So they
man.
decide. So that's what they used to round up like hundreds of people during protests, holding them for a few hours
Uh-huh.
without access to lawyers or like water or food, or torturing them, and then they would let them go without charges.
Yeah, this is I've heard about this happening in like the US too. It reminds me of this like whole concept of like kettling at protests, where they just basically just like take in like they like surround like a group of people with like police tape, and they're just like hold people for hours. And I mean, from what I understand, this is all like this, from what I heard, this is a lot of like training, a lot of NYPD training in Israel and stuff like that. But this is a whole other topic.
It's big. Anyway, I would love to talk about this stuff more, but it's getting late here and it's really warm.
Sure.
And
Yeah. Absolutely.
I would happily come on again to talk about these topics. Greece has is really information wealthy, let's say, about like understanding, like, the extremes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
also Greece is a very interesting perspective to like speak from, because like you said way back in the beginning of our talk, so many people just love Greece. You know, if you I mean, I remember being in 7th grade in the United States and learning all about Greek mythology and Greek history, and oh man, I love Greek food. You know what I mean? Like I have some relatives who are Greek and stuff like this. It's like so
Yeah.
it's like, but so many people love have this romantic image of Greece in their head, just as they do with like the Scandinavian countries and Italy and all this kind of stuff. So it's another, yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming on and talking today, and we'll definitely talk
It's
again,
always a
because
pleasure.
it's a great perspective to hear. That's why we're here, you know. So yeah, thanks a lot, Richard Hannay George, for coming
Yeah.
on the show.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I would happily come on again to talk about another topic. Maybe,
Yeah,
modern revolution insurgencies, like stuff in my actual field, of military history. Maybe even the Greek Civil War, which really I've never seen. Like there was very few channels outside of some left channels in within Greece, and some history channels that have covered the
mm,
Greek Civil War.
mm.
So I would
Yeah,
really
I would
like to talk about it some point.
absolutely. Let's do an episode on Greek Civil War. It sounds great. Sounds very interesting, and got to get the word out about this stuff. That's why we're here, you know.
Yeah.
Just before you leave, if you want to just like tell anybody where they can find you or follow you or get in touch with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can find me on social media. At this point, I only have my Twitter account. I'm planning at some point maybe to start a YouTube channel or a Twitch channel, but still, it's pretty far away. I don't know exactly when. I have my first video in mind, but
Cool.
yeah, I want to talk about Stalin and how people tend to freeze up when talking in the left about criticisms of Stalin, but he was a really bad guy. There's plenty to criticize. So I want to talk about like dispel a lot of myths, like get to the root of it, and
Absolutely.
yeah. And right now you can find me on Twitter at Richard Hannay 17, and or yeah, it's just the same as my name displayed on the screen, I guess.
On the screen
Um,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll drop it in the description of the video too later. We're gonna drop
Cool.
this in. We're gonna put this in podcast format too, so people can listen to it if you're one of our
All right.
few watchers out there. So hopefully it'll be replicated throughout the airwaves.
Okay then.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. We got a lot to talk about, so have a good evening.
Right. Cheers.
All right.
Bye bye.
Talk to you later. All right, everybody, and man, that was fantastic. What a wealth of information. Mr. George from Greece over there is Richard Hannay, 17. Yeah, thanks so much for all of you who dropped some comments in here too. Thanks for engaging a little bit in the conversation. We didn't get too many, to be honest. We're just a humble little podcast right now, but we're growing little by little. But I did get an interesting comment right here from Reasoning Aloud. One could argue that the way our schools are designed is a method of preparing children for entry into the carceral system. Oof. I think that's a very good point. Reasoning Aloud, for sure. I mean, I can say, I guess you're talking from the U.S. standpoint. I'm not exactly sure where you're from, but I'm assuming that you're relating that to what we were talking about a little earlier with the police and school and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. A lot of school can be. I mean, I'm a teacher myself, or I was a teacher myself. And I had a lot of great experience in school, so I have a lot of love for schools and teachers at the same time. But even I can say, as a student and as a teacher in that institution, a lot of the time it can be very militaristic as well. Militaristic, and there's a lot of parallels and intersections with that in the prison system and the carceral system as well. I mean, all the authoritarianism of school, the bureaucracy, the limitations on what you can do, what you can say. It just depends on really where you go, also. But in general, bizarre. Speaking of which, related to Reasoning Aloud's comment, I just wanted to bring up this one article that I found. And let me see, real ADD right now. Let me see if I can share this article that I saw coming out of my home state of Florida today. Where is it? Yes. Yes, this one right here. Oh, God, I hate even talking about this guy. So, yeah, Governor DeSantis, sorry for all the ads, everybody. Governor DeSantis, that's the governor of Florida, where I'm from, signs a moment of silence in public school bill in Surfside. So we look down here. Governor DeSantis made an unscheduled stop in West Palm Beach. Get off my screen. You got to get the ad blocker working. Yeah, the governor, West Palm Beach. Yikes, that's where I'm from. And down here, yeah, let's get it. He signed some. DeSantis signed 2 bills. The first being the moment of silence in public schools. What does that mean? Nobody knows. It sounds bizarre. Let's see what he said. The idea that you can just push God out of every institution and you can be successful. I'm sorry, our founding fathers did not believe that, DeSantis said, further voicing his support for Jewish communities and religious freedom. So I'm not exactly sure. I guess we're going to have to find out more about this, but the moment of silence in public schools, I mean, is this a moment of prayer? Is this like code language for that? I mean, what can you do during this moment of silence? I mean, push God out of every instant. I mean, push God out of school. I think we can push God out of school unless you go to a religious school, because God is very relative. People have different gods. Some people have no gods. It's something that I've mentioned quite a few times on this podcast. I'm not even a fan of the Pledge of Allegiance. Ooh, I know, controversial. I'm not even a big fan of the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was one of those people where I would just, Pledge of Allegiance in high school. I mean, I would stand up, but I wouldn't do the heart thing. I did my own little protest. Me and a couple other kids, I think it was the Jehovah Witness and like the skinhead in class. None of us were doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm not a big fan of, taking the hat off and putting the hand over the heart for the Star Spangled Banner either. I think that all of this stuff is very authoritarian, very zombie-like. And yeah, it's preparing you for things like the military, preparing you for things like the prison system, like the carceral system. It might sound extreme. Yeah, okay, we're doing extremes right now, but it's just like it's grooming you. It's grooming you from a very it's grooming you from a very young age to stand up every single day, put your hand over your heart, talk about God and country and nationalism. Not a fan. Nationalism. It's kind of like religion. It is um I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. For some people, it can be helpful or interesting or cozy, or you like to celebrate holidays or whatever. Okay, this is fine, but it's usually more trouble than it's worth. It gets us in a whole lot of trouble all the time. I mean, don't even get me started. Uh, we go into that in our interviews here about the kind of trouble that nationalism causes us. But yeah, it's just I just don't think that it really has. I can't really off the top of my head think of any place in society nationalism holds a very important point. I think there's other ways that we can there's other more just, more egalitarian ways that we can organize society. Anyways, thank you so much, Reason Aloud, for that comment. I can agree with that. And yeah, just thanks everybody for tuning in today here on the Progressives Abroad podcast. Thank you so much to Richard Hannay George for coming on and telling us about what's happening in Greece with the general strike and otherwise. And yeah, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever we are starting to upload these. There have about 30 episodes actually in the audio podcast format. We're just starting to do these live streams now, so bear with me. Technical difficulties, we're yada yada yada. We're just getting there. But you can go back and check out our previous episodes from last season. We got some really cool interviews, probably over 30 hours of interviews. So you can subscribe to that wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. We do have a Twitch channel, but I haven't gotten into that yet. I'm kind of waiting until we get some more feedback and more donations and stuff like that, because I need to upgrade my system here. So right now I can only broadcast out to Facebook, I can only broadcast out to Twitter, and broadcast to YouTube. So yeah, hey, hit the like button so you can get us up in the algorithm. And please, as it says at the bottom of the screen, donate at paypal.me/international super. That is our PayPal account where you can just drop in whatever. We don't have a Patreon yet. We might get into that, but we're just keeping it real low key, keeping it real grassroots. And I thank everybody for tuning in, and please share this wherever you can if you found it interesting, and try to chop the interview up a little bit so we can get something out of that. But yeah, send me your feedback. And yeah, I said I was going to play some songs, but I might just do that another day. So thanks everybody for listening. This is your host Boutique, Progressives Abroad, over no, wait, give us a shout. Progressives Abroad, over and out. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Peace.